It's just a simple wrist turn, causes enough pain and make him think about what's going on, and then I just guide him to the ground. It's very simple, and he's actually resisting me today, so I'm actually having to force him to the ground. So he did state earlier, Jordan's like, I don't like falling, and I don't blame him. Falling is never fun, especially when all we have is this much padding. However, we do learn how to fall appropriately. So, once again, Jordan doesn't like me, so he's coming up at me. Okay. This is a very simple maneuver just to get the person away from you. From there, if it was me and a person really had the intent of hurting me, I'd probably turn and run. You know, I might know how to fight. That doesn't mean I like to fight. Okay. The next, I laugh because the next maneuver is more of a leg sweep. So Jordan's actually going to fly into the air for a moment in time and then hit the ground. He doesn't like this. I don't blame him, but he ended up being the person who drew the wrong straw and he gets to fall. So I'll do it slowly to show what's going to happen first without throwing him to the ground, and then we'll do it a bit more in speed so you can see what happens. Jordan's a bigger guy than me, okay? And a lot of people are like, well, you know, you run into different sizes of people all the time. And I have a few female students, and I've seen them throw around some very big guys with proper technique. So don't always think just because the guy is bigger that it's going to be harder. You ready to fall? Jordan, thank you. So as you can see, even on my part, even though he's a larger guy, okay, I had to change my technique a little bit. I had to throw my leg in there and make sure he fell down, even though I was picking him up. So it just goes to show that even though you practice a certain way, things change up, as they say, on the battlefield. So you practice as well as you can, and then you ad-lib from there. You make it up and make it look good. Now that we kind of understand, okay, so they grappled. We wanted to go through that fast because we're more about the swords, to be honest. But we do practice the hand-to-hand combat. Now, as you can see, Jordan here has a classic dagger. 18 inches long, double-bladed. Now, what's interesting is this is referred to as a cutting dagger. The more appropriate dagger during the period of time that was probably the dagger of choice was referred to as a rondelle dagger. Looked like a big ice pick. Plain and simple. You held it, had a big pointy end, didn't have a cutting edge. The whole purpose was to use it as a can opener, and it was used mainly by the armored knights, is they would be able to lose their sword if they had to, draw that ice pick, and get into all the spots in the armor, such as the visor, between the arms, in the sides of the armor, and so forth, to do the damage. But today we're going to go with a cutting dagger, because that's what most people are familiar with, because nobody uses a big ice pick nowadays, unless it's a movie. All right, so first off, Jordan's just going to show us 2 cuts with the dagger. Okay, we have our up blade style, so he's holding the dagger so it's pointed up. And then we have our down blade style, which is stabbing mainly. Okay? From here, with the stabbing, the main stab is over the head, comes down. Okay, everybody knows the movies, and it comes from the side. With the up blade, especially with the dagger with the blade, it's a lot more versatile. You can stab, you can slice, you can cut. Use your imagination. And it's really hard to understand knife work. They spend a lot of time in the military going over how to handle a person with a knife and how to handle a knife. As I always tell my students, if you have a knife, you're going to get cut. If they have a knife, you're going to get cut. If you both have knives, it's just more cutting. It just means that even if you're the one with the knife, expect to get cut somewhere in a fight, because that thing starts to fly at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And the majority of all knife fighting in modern times is done by ambush, meaning they don't want you to see it coming. And so if you've ever been very curious, just go to YouTube. It'll open your eyes up. So Jordan's going to come at me a few different ways with a dagger, and I'll show some basic ways to get rid of that dagger from their hands before it becomes a problem. Now, as you saw there, okay, now that he has his dagger, it looked very basic, very simple. All I'm doing is stopping his arm before it gets to me, and what I'm doing is I'm doing something that's referred to as breaking against the thumb. So no matter how hard, he can have a death grip on that thing, and it's still going to come right out of his hand, just like it did. Because instead of breaking across all 4 fingers in the palm, all I have to do is go across 1 digit, which is the thumb. Okay, so that dagger just pulls right out of his hand with a little bit of leverage. And in this situation, even I myself, while I might get cut, it's done in a way that the flat of the blade comes across my arm, so I can easily disarm him without hurting myself. Now what he's going to show next is if he came in for a midsection cut in a down blade situation, very similar, where I'm going to stop, hyperextend his arm, which will loosen up his fingers just long enough for me to grab the knife out of his hand. Well, I loosened him up a bit more than I thought. So that little twitch of the arm is enough to make those ligaments, all those tendons in the arm, spasm. Makes his hand open up. And so if I get him just right like I did, as you can see, even though he was holding on to that, it flew right out of his hand. I was being nice to him. Now, what he wants to really show you is what you see in most knife fights nowadays, which is the up blade belly stab. This shoveling motion. Okay? This shoveling motion is probably what you see most in any sort of video or movie. This movement is what you'll see most because it's simple but effective, because you're going straight for all your vital organs. Okay? One good spot is enough to usually down a person permanently. I should know, I'm an EMT, so it doesn't take a whole lot. So I stopped his arm. Okay. Now, did he tap me? Yes. Did he stab me? No. Like I said earlier, you're going to get cut. It's going to happen. However, I have control of his arm. Okay. From there, I just did the same maneuver. Hyperextend the arm so I can get the knife. Now, today we're being very nice to Jordan. There's much more devastating ways to deal with an opponent. but they're not really demonstratable because people walk away hurt. We learn them in our classes, but we do it in a very safe and friendly manner. So, do we get bruised? Yes. So we'll do this a little bit faster. He didn't have to hold on to that much. It came right out of his hand. So really what we were demonstrating in the first little bit of this is just some of the very simplistic things that we do and that is taught. Because first we learn how to grapple. So we learn how to move our feet. We learn how to move our hands. We get some coordination to ourselves. Then we put our weapon in our hands. We learn a bit more how to use that. Eventually, we want to get a sword in our hands. And that's really why we're here, right? That's really why we wanted to sit down and watch, is because we're curious as to see if these two crazy guys on stage are going to cut themselves and hurt themselves. Luckily, nothing's sharp up here. I apologize. We didn't have our sharp blade today or anything set up. It would have been lots of fun to do some test cutting today. So what Jordan's doing is he's talking about, he's telling me subliminally, yeah, you try and say that fast with a dry mouth. But this is our safety gear. This is what we wear in class all the time when we practice. Does it get hot? Yes, it gets hot, but we stay hydrated. So what we wear is, first what Jordan put on is called an arming cap. This is actually historically accurate. This is what they wore underneath the helmets. But of course, we don't have the heavy helmets that they wore back then because we don't need to strap on 40 to 60 pounds of armor when we practice. So we use a saber mask or a fencing helmet, which with that arming cap on, definitely makes it a snug fit and comfortable. From there, the other basic gear we wear is our gloves. You might find these very recognizable. They're lacrosse gloves because they're fully tactile, so they can use all their fingers, but they're also well padded, so if you take a shot to your hand, while it does hurt, admittedly, it's not going to break or bruise as much as it could. So I've walked away with a few pretty good bashes on my hands. However, I've seen some broken fingers. I've also seen people pull a fingernail back. That's always fun. But through all the years I've been doing this, I think the worst injury I've ever seen is either a broken rib or a broken clavicle, which is your collarbone. Those are the worst things I've seen. And both of them were caused because two people collided. It wasn't even because they got stabbed by a sword, it was because they ran into each other, of all silliness. The other gear we wear, or use, when we do our steel is we just put a little rubber tip on the end because nobody likes to get stabbed by a butter knife. And so that disperses the energy just enough that when we're wearing a bit more padding on our chest, it disperses the energy and leaves you with a good bruise, but nothing more. We also have shin guards. Looks familiar? These are actually children's guards. I just strap them on my leg when somebody wants to get real aggressive with me. But we don't usually use them unless it's a tournament. So from there, we have a typical swordsman set up ready for class. So now that we generally know the safety equipment, first we want to learn how to defend ourselves. In the Italian style, there are 15 general guard positions. That's a lot to remember, but it's a basic setup that transforms the area around your body into a well-understood section of where to defend yourself. So let's actually have Jordan face forward, okay? And so I'm going to call out a guard position, and Jordan's going to do it. Let's see if he does. Let's see how he does. So the first guard position that we do is a high guard position. We'll start at the top of the head. This is fairly familiar. Okay. The Italians didn't use this a whole lot, but we integrated because we do touch on the Italian, or excuse me, on the English. The English used this guard position a lot. and they call it the Hawk's position. Okay? From there, we go into what we call the Falcon position. Okay? The Falcon position is a very common position because it's an easy position to strike from to your opponent, but it's also well positioned there to set aside any sort of thrusts or strikes coming at you. So from there, we're going to move into what we call our long guard. Okay? Our long guard, as you can see, is designed to keep an opponent at you, or away from you, I should say. So from there, you can judge distance, and you can keep them at bay long enough for you to relax and maybe think about your next position or maneuver. From there, we do our frontal guard, or what's called our crown guard. Now this is designed to protect the head. When somebody's coming at you directly into the head, you're able to place your sword in front of it to block anything coming at you. Moving down into our iron gate, or half iron gate position. This is also called our low guard position. Okay? So far, we've transitioned straight from above down to below. We're protecting our center line mass of our body. From there, we're going to bring it to our right side and show the full iron gate. Okay? Looks a bit awkward, but it's a great position to block the right side of your lower body. And then if he takes a step back, we'll do what's called the boar's tooth position. Same thing, other side, different name. From there, we're going to do some of our fun positions that we do, which is our tail position. So he's going to step forward into a tail guard position. Okay? A lot of people have seen this in the movies. This is definitely one that's very fun and popular. But there's only a couple of things you can really do from this position. It's easier to show from this side, that's right. Okay. From there, we have a couple of positions that you rarely see because they're referred to as provoking guards. So they're designed to egg the person on so they attack you. And that's what we call the guard of the woman. So the guard of the woman is designed, so if I'm here looking at him, I assume that he's not really in a defensible position. However, he has a lot of power to set aside a block or a strike if he needs to from that position. Okay? And of course, give the Italians the credit of calling the guard of the woman. The master Fior said the guard of the woman, he called it thusly, is because if you looked over your shoulder through your blade, it would be like you were a coy woman playing with a man. I always thought that was very funny. From there, we have one of the best defensible positions that we use, which is our window guard. He's trying to figure out how to show it to you the best way. Okay? The window guard position is actually one of our positions we use the most. It's because anything coming at the head needs to be defended against properly. So that'll come down, he'll be able to block that appropriately, and then cut through with a counter. And we are going to show how that window guard works in a fight. So I'll demonstrate that later. From here, we move into what we call our two-horned guard. Now the two-horned guard is designed, the two-horned guard is designed to get ready and thrust from this position. For cleaning up the language of what some people call this, they call it the oh crap position. Because you're in a normal fighting position and you need to quickly defend yourself by pulling your hands up and in what they call the oh crap. Because they're trying to defend themselves still properly, but being able to attack from that position. From here, there's only one or two positions that we use, but they're so uncommon because we use them mainly against two people. So if we are either surrounded by two people or dealing with two people, these are more of a two-person guard position, which is our tired guard of the window. He's trying to remember here. These are the two that are very uncommon to do. So it comes across the right shoulder, and as you look back at your opponent. Here. So, there you go. That's guarded the woman on the left. Here, we'll show you real quick here. If I had two people on me, I'm able to place my sword and keep my eye here, but also be able to go this way. So if I need to, I can either cut here or here appropriately, quickly to two people. Thank you, Jordan. You know, let's give Jordan a hand. He's been really helpful with me today. Now, from here, that's how you defend yourself. Okay, so we've understood there's a kind of a circle around our body, and we learned there's a left side and a right side, and we are guarding all these different angles of attack. Well, how do you attack? Now, when it comes to the attacks, there's 12 basic sword movements. 12. You would think there would be less, but really it's broken down very strictly, so we understand when we talk about, when we sit down at a table and say, well, if somebody's coming at you from here, how do you defend? And so we break it down so it's easier to discuss over a table than necessarily do it in class. So we name these numerically when we teach them in English, and then of course I will say first the English, and then I'll say the Italian, what the Italians call it. So first we do, which is our aggressive position 1. So this is referred to as the dritto mezzana, which means it's a true half cut. Okay. From there you go to position 2, which is the mano reverso mezzana, which is basically from the left to a half cut. From there you have position 3, also the mezzana, and 4, also mezzana. Now you're kind of wondering, in the Italian, they didn't really break it down very well. Well, the reasoning behind that is he just called it a half cut. The master says, oh, you're just going about halfway. That's all we need to do. We'll call it halfway. So anything that happens in here is a mezzana. And that actually took years to figure out when we started decoding what the masters showed. From there, we understand that there's 2 cuts across the belly. So we have 5, excuse me, and 6. And these are referred to as the volante, which is basically the middle cut. And this is done mainly when you're really close to somebody. So if I was this close to Jordan, he would be able to cut me properly, but still cut me from the side. From here, we have our 7, which is referred to as montante. That is the mountain, because you're scaling the mountain. From here, you go fendente, which is position 8, which means from the teeth. Okay, I'm sure you've heard of dentin or dente. It's your teeth. And then fen, which is from. It's fendente, from the teeth. Pretty simple. Now, he's going to step back a few so he doesn't go right off the stage. We're at position 8. Position 9 is a strike straight through, and it's a very tough strike. We call them power strikes. And this is also fendente, but in the Renaissance, they said, well, there needs to be a distinction between straight down and from the side. And so they said, you know what? We'll call it the squalembrato, which means from the shoulder. So from there, we go into the squalembrato on the other side. Same thing. This is designed to come from the shoulder, straight through the body, and out the knee. If there was a way to go through the body that way. From there, we go to the other side. Okay? This is referred to as a sotani, which means from the soles of the feet. Okay? And of course, the other side. I was waiting for that. All right, and of course we have position 12 to end all the cuts that we go through, 1 through 12. And as you can tell from the Italian terms, they really broke it down very simply. Left, right, up, down, and you're done. We broke it down into 12 movements in order for our students to learn the full actuality of the sword. Okay, from here, it looks like we're going to go over some of the sword techniques. Now, after we show you some of the sword techniques that we do, I really like to do a question and answer. If you have any questions, I answer. If I don't answer, it's not a question. Catch that? No? Okay. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to do some basic sword maneuvers that are what is referred to as quick counters. These are done to cut first. The Italians believed that if a person is coming at you with a sword, your goal is to get them first, because whoever strikes first wins. Where with the Germans believe that you should attack, 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 and when you are done attacking, you've won. They don't do a whole lot of defending, but it's a theoretical difference, where the Italians like to quickly strike you like an assault rifle, where the Germans will just come at you like a tank. So we'll go ahead and show some of the maneuvers. I need to suit up.